And here's your prescription.
I know just the pharmacy to get this filled.
Who are you?
A pharmacy benefit manager. A middleman your insurer uses to decide which medicines you can get, what you pay, and sometimes even which pharmacy you should go to.
Why can't I go to a pharmacy in my neighborhood?
Because I make more money when you go to a pharmacy I own.
No one should stand between you and your medicine. Visit phrma.org/middleman to learn more. Paid for by Pharma.
We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job! You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Now they motion Casey over. Daniels in the gun. He looks right. He's flushed out of the pocket to the right. Throwing on the run. It's caught! It's caught!
Casey!
And Kansas will win!
Holy cow!
Jared Casey with the play of his life. And the Jayhawks take down Texas.
Thank you, Lee. And thank you, Brian Haney of the Jayhawk Sports Network from Learfield. How about it? Rock chalked all over him. Hooked him.
You start a show with Kansas. Somebody did an uh-oh.
We will come back to our friends in Lawrence. Of course we will, Stephen Godfrey. But I did want to get it out of the way that, yes, the Kansas Jayhawks did defeat the Texas Longhorns
Sure did.
in Austin, Texas.
In overtime. I have a lot to say about that. We'll get to it in a second. All right, let's start this as you have as you've gathered, because this is week 2. I am not Alex Kirshner. What I am is Stephen Godfrey doing a poor Alex Kirshner
Week 2 of you.
Yeah.
If this was actually week 2,
we'd be dead.
I would be
We're
even
exhausted.
closer to a nervous breakdown
Yes.
than I already am.
Correct. No, this is week 2 of me filling in for Alex Kirshner. As always, I want to plug Stats of War on Twitter because he is helping me behind the scenes compile some EPA analysis because I'm a long-form investigative journalist who doesn't know that much about advanced stats or schematics, so I'm trying my best. That's the best I can say. Richard, let's start in the Big 12. Baylor.
30 minutes on the clock.
Oh, wait. Oh, my God.
I got it.
You got it this week? For the record, I
I
remembered last week. All right. Baylor, 27. Oklahoma, 14. Before we even get to what's on the run sheet, let's do this real fast, Richard. Never, ever, 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 ever complain about the opposing team scoring points on you, even at the end, even when there's actually a logical explanation, which is that Baylor was concerned about potential tiebreakers. Don't do that, Lincoln.
Also, do you buy that? Because I kind of do.
What, the explanation?
That Aranda actually did kick that field goal with 1 second left because of the tiebreakers.
Oh, yeah, no, Aranda's like a supercomputer nerd. Like, I guarantee you, so like that was a situation someone pointed out, and he absolutely did. Yeah, especially considering the circumstances around it, where the game almost ends. Yeah, I totally buy it.
For the uninitiated, Baylor's fans basically rush. Not basically, they rush the field.
Yeah, a lot.
With 1 second left, they have to work to get them off the field, obviously, because there's 1,000 students. They put 1 second back on the clock, and Baylor kicks a field goal to win 27-14 instead of 24-14.
There are times where I don't care if I come off sounding like the old man of the podcast, which I am. This is not one of them. I don't want to draw the ire of college football Twitter here, but I love the fact that this was a Big 12 conference game of merit, of impact, of importance, and it was low scoring, high stakes Big 12 game. Look, I'm so tired of 59-56. This was more fun to watch. Please don't cancel me, college football Twitter. Baylor held Oklahoma to 260 total yards. That is the lowest total since Lincoln has been in Norman, either as an OC or the head coach. If you want to go very simple, very, very dirty on this, Baylor stopped the Oklahoma running game. They were creative enough to kind of bolster their deep passing. They got off. Every time I looked up, Richard, I felt like I saw a really creative. Do you call it a middle screen where you basically just kind of get the back kind of directly like past the linebacker? You just go straight with your screen instead of the side? Because I saw that play 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, where the running back basically ends up sort of like over the ball, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a lot of that, and then it would break for 17, 20 yards.
Because Gary Bohannon ain't chucking it deep, and they know better.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really creative. I tweeted this that, I no longer worry if the head coaching job is too big for Dave Aranda. This was a coming out party for Baylor as a program under Aranda. I thought it was great. We saw Spencer Rattler. He's back again because Caleb Williams couldn't get anything going. I assume that doesn't mean anything other than no one could get anything going for Oklahoma, and there's not an issue there, right?
I mean, I think we'll find out next week. I think we will find out next week. Somebody should probably go on the top of I think it was a dorm, and check out Oklahoma's practice this week. Just
I thought it was a parking garage. No, maybe it was a dorm.
Maybe it was a dorm.
Gary Bohannon, 109 rushing yards. Obviously hit the over on that Prize Picks. I'm an idiot as usual. Quick reminder before you want to take any context from this. Reminder maybe to the Cincinnati Bearcats or pretty much anyone else interested in the college football playoff. 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2019. Do you know what those years have in common? Oklahoma lost a conference game, went on to win the Big 12, went on to the playoff. Just saying.
God.
You're not always eliminated. It doesn't quite work like that.
Oklahoma's defense gave up 27 points in this game, and also a drive that petered out at the 2-yard line because they stopped them on 4th down.
Yeah.
For me, Oklahoma, the run game here, odd. So Oklahoma's bread and butter is counter. They ran it by my count twice in this game. The play side couldn't get the double team on a 3 technique, which is the defender between the guard and the tackle for the uninitiated. On the 2 times early in the game that they ran it, one time the defensive lineman sort of like slanted over there to take away the double team, and the other time he was lined up in a place that it was hard to double team him. I don't know, but I do know that Oklahoma went away from it and did not come back to it. They tried to replace it a little bit. Mm-hmm. They would pull a tackle from the backside to the front side, and then they would use an H-back or somebody who was already in the backfield on the front side to be the second the second puller, so to speak, even though he did not pull. Whatever they did or didn't do, they were neutered. Baylor neutered them in the running game. Compared to what Oklahoma usually does. Caleb Williams obviously struggled to throw the ball down the field, had some YOLO 500 throws that ended up as interceptions. We saw Spencer Rattler. We saw Spencer Rattler come back in this game. Not good from Oklahoma. Not good at all. And if your bread and butter gets neutered, it's not a good situation. Michigan 27, Penn State 17.
Michigan 21, Penn State 17. Although Richard,
like
I want to start. Even though it was close, even though it was so fucking Big Ten, I'm going to say a lot of nice things about Michigan. Gird your loins. Wolverines started really slow. Their defense, or maybe Penn State's offense, we'll kind of figure that out, I guess. But they figured it out. Hassan Haskins was basically the primary back because the other guy, Corum, was out. But he looked like a feature back. It totally worked. I do want to...
Yeah, he can play.
I do want to crap on Penn State for a second because the offense is very flawed. It's noticeably flawed. It's a bad offensive line. I don't think that Clifford has really looked the same since the injury. But that being said, I'm not trying to rob Michigan of credit. Their defense bottles you up. Did a great job. Also, real quick, James Franklin, fake punt, okay, I'm cool with. Fake field goal?
There were a lot of fake field goals yesterday, too.
But there
were like 4 or 5 around the sport.
Why not just leave your offense out there, dog?
It was also a bad fake field goal.
Yeah.
It wasn't the couple of the other ones were the running fake field goals. This was the throw it to the kicker fake field goal.
Not good, dude. This Michigan team, I just want to point out, is a kind of few officiating calls in the Michigan State game away from being undefeated. And I'm going to say that this is a good Michigan team, possibly the best we've seen under Harbaugh.
Michigan's entire offense is 3-by-1. The trips receivers fuck off and run down the field. The singled up wide receiver on the backside runs a shallow cross. That's it. That is the fastball. It's how they scored the last touchdown. It does work, man. But that's all they got.
Don't play an ace when you can win with a 4.
McNamara, I think, is really good throwing over the middle of the field. He's on time. He's got chutzpah when he does it. He can really and truly do it.
Yeah.
There was a point in this game. I was having a dialogue with friend of the show, Deontay Lee, about something that Michigan's going to have to do in a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. That I thought maybe they were showing signs of life to spur me to optimism about whether they could handle the task in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Then I watched the 4th quarter of Michigan Penn State, and then I watched the first half of Ohio State, which we will get to in a little bit. Georgia 41, Tennessee 17.
Yeah, so this was
Tennessee.
Can I ask you this question first, or do you want to do your analysis? Because
no, do it.
People
hang the banner, Vols.
People were losing their shit, Richard. Okay. Let's just go straight to it. Opening drive for Tennessee, 10 plays, 77 yards, At one point, Georgia's secondary just looked completely lost. All right.
Yeah, they were not ready for it.
It was a touchdown drive. It's the first touchdown scored against Georgia in the first opening drive to score any points against Georgia in the first quarter. South Carolina had 2 field goals in the first quarter. That was the only thing I could even find that was close. So this looked like, in that moment, oh my God, this is happening. Of course, then Georgia went down the field very methodically, tied the game up, and then the inevitability set in. Richard, explain to me why, or not me, but explain to our audience why first drives are different than the rest of the game, and also why they are deceptive as indicators of what's going to happen for the rest of the game.
Yeah, when you watch football, when I watch football, I basically watch it in a couple like different chunks. First drives for each team, that's one chunk. Then the chunk to the middle 8, that's another chunk. Then the middle 8, then the rest of the game, basically. Those first 2 drives, when people say I could coach, you could probably script the first 10 plays. Over a week, you could probably sit with a staff, and you, offensive play caller who listens to this podcast, could probably script the first 10 or 15.
Right.
But your ass could never
right.
figure out adjustments. I don't care how dumb you think your coach is. They are better than you, way better than you, at figuring out adjustments. And that's what happens. Basically, you come out the first 10 and you run. Like, I actually talked to Wake Forest offensive coordinator a couple weeks ago, Warren Ruggiero, and they don't script the first 10.
Really?
Because part of it is to do with their offense. But the other thing is, he was like, if the script isn't good, you're kind of screwed. But like that, after the first drive, that's when we figure out who can coach and who can't.
Yeah.
So to speak, on a given day. I thought that Tennessee obviously came out in that first drive and had them. They had a great game plan for that first drive. Tennessee defensive line dealing with the stomach bug. A lot of injuries for Tennessee. This is the game that past Georgia's lose. Georgia's got the stomach bug. Georgia's got to go to depth with their edge rushers because of what happened, obviously, with Adam Anderson. Mm-hmm. Georgia has a few players that get hurt throughout this game. And yet, for the last 2.5 quarters, the game was basically never in doubt.
It's the depth,
on
man.
defense.
It's the depth.
On defense for Tennessee. I did think Tennessee's defensive line played pretty well, all things considered. But Tennessee got with bad rush lanes in this game twice early, and it screwed them. There was a 3rd and 2 before Georgia's first touchdown, a long touchdown they scored. 2 guys rushed the same gap on a blitz. There's nobody in the edge. Stetson Bennett boots it out, first down. On Bennett's run, a scramble touchdown, the same thing happened. There's a linebacker who goes outside, basically, of the tackle box. There's no rush lane integrity. There's nobody in the middle of the field. Stetson Bennett scores. It's the little things against a team that's this good. Mm-hmm. But for this Georgia team to take this shot, take that shot in the first half, not wilt. It was sort of a grinder one for the first quarter and a half here. They didn't really they weren't in gear.
No urgency for the Georgia offense to come back out after that drive, which I kind of think is impressive in retrospect because they did not change who they are as a Georgia offense in response to Tennessee bombing them real fast.
JT Daniels did not come in the game.
No.
You know what I mean? And Stetson Bennett was not Joe Montana in this game, by the way.
No.
They
Lad McConkeyed the shit out of this as usual. Sure that's what they do. So
they're just a really, really, really good football team. Yeah. By the way, Candace Parker on the sideline, the legend, the GOAT. Home Field Apparel sweatshirt, Candace. You looked wonderful in that sweatshirt. Our friends at Home Field Apparel, 20% off your first order. Promo code SCD, homefieldapparel.com. Ole Miss 29, Texas A&M
19.
That happened. It should have been way worse.
So this is why I do trust advanced analytics, because I ain't about to come on here and sing in the praises of Ole Miss's defense or the schematic genius of TJ Jerkin. I'm not doing that. So Ole Miss kind of controlled the tempo of the game. It was a very lopsided first half. They shut them out completely. The defense closes the game with the pick 6 of Calzada. By the way, this does, now that we can kind of start looking on the macro, this knocks A&M out of the SEC West, basically. And then Ole Miss, I guess, technically has a shot if Alabama loses out. But you are going to see Alabama and Georgia now.
There is a chaos scenario, by the way, that Auburn can get to the SEC
there is.
game.
So this is where I dive in and I ask the smart people what to do. Essentially, this is the best way to look at the game, according to Parker from Stats of War. Ole Miss was way better at selecting their passes, and Jimbo called a stinker. So I'm going to lean towards someone smart saying, hey, this was Jimbo's failings as a play caller and an offensive mind than it was Ole Miss's defense suddenly becoming the 85 Bears. Ole Miss had a 60.8% rush rate. Basically, Texas A&M rushed 42.6% of the time. This was essentially Ole Miss passing better than anything else that happened in the game. This was not a perfect Ole Miss offense by any stretch, but this was Lane as a play caller beating Texas A&M and Jimbo as a play caller roughly. Although I still honestly cannot believe they shut them out in the first half. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's it. Lane was kind of content to let the defense cook, so to speak.
Yeah.
They did punt on A&M's 40-ish yard line.
Ole Miss did not run the ball well. They were negative in EPA per rush. This was not a overwhelmingly good performance by Ole Miss, but it ends up being dominant. It still doesn't make any sense.
Right, but given the points and then the points they leave on the scoreboard, you're like, Ole Miss probably should have ran away with this.
This was, Richard, one of the few times where I've seen Ole Miss fail to score because they're so aggressive on fourth down. They fail to score at a 4th and goal, and yet you didn't feel like it was going to bite them in the ass because of how inept A&M was. All right, let's move on. Whew. Richard, they covered Alabama 59, New Mexico State University 3.
Yeah, New Mexico State's the worst team in the country, not named UConn or UMass. By the way, UMass and New Mexico State play Thanksgiving weekend. That's really going to be something.
I know what Sicko's Twitter is going to be doing.
That's going to be something.
All right, Richard, you ready?
Yes.
You want me to clear my throat?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Fuck.
We will take this however you want to do it because I have a lot of empathy. I'm older. I'm wiser. I know.
I don't even know if I'm going to.
I know to be gentle with someone who's emotionally distraught. Florida 70, Samford 52.
I was just what? There was a point in this game where it occurred to me that Todd Grantham may have been papering over cracks. By the way, that's where it got to it's
Damn.
At this point.
Wow.
I have
not heard anyone say that. That's terrifying.
I'm not terribly concerned about the post-game locker room video. Dude, they're 20 years old. They just won a football game. Yeah, man, be excited. Whatever. Yeah. I don't care what your phone is. Okay. Dan.
This is America. You can celebrate avoiding embarrassment. Most of us do it on a weekly basis.
But when Dan gets up there and acts like you can't. I would like to give Dan Mullen credit for talking to his team in that moment and understanding the pulse of his team and understanding that they're a little bit fragile right now and, trying to build them up through the media. But that would mean I would have to give him the benefit of the doubt, which I'm not doing ever at this point in time. I just don't
What's that buyout
It comes
math?
off glib.
What's that buyout math?
It comes off glib. $6 million within 60 days, $1 million for the next 6 years for
You're going to have a fucking bumper sticker by the time we're done with this. Mississippi State 43, Auburn 34. I regret to inform everyone, although I definitely feel like I just passed on a curse like this is the ring, that Auburn blew a 28-3 lead. The Tigers scored 4 touchdowns on their first 4 drives. Mississippi State won the second half 33-6 on the road. Will Rogers was just vintage 2004 Texas Tech quarterback stat line, 44 of 56 passing, 415 yards, and 6 fucking touchdowns. Auburn, what happened?
Bo Nix has a leg injury, which might be pretty bad. We'll see how that goes coming the rest of the season. And I thought that would be the last time we saw Bo Nix because I assumed that Bo Nix was out of eligibility given that he has been the starting quarterback of Auburn since circa 2013. And then I was informed last night that Bo Nix has not just 1, but possibly 2 years of eligibility left.
He's going to be one of those Wake Forest quarterbacks that's there for a decade and they just quietly sneak it in. Arkansas 16, LSU 13 in overtime. Oh, I watched this whole game.
Yeah, why? I watched overtime, and that's it.
Because shout out to my father-in-law who's listening because my in-laws were in town. Okay, credit LSU's defense. technically, they did a good job.
Yes, by the letter of the law.
I'm
yes.
trying here. No, Arkansas is the better team, is the better coach team, was more than capable of confusing what it was really a poorly managed quarterback rotation, and just what it was fun to watch LSU fans live and in person, and then also them getting on the phone with other LSU fans, just agog at the decision-making on offense, both in personnel and play calling. This ended in a really bad end zone fade for an interception, and then Arkansas kicked the field goal to win. They win the boot, which is a big damn deal to Arkansas. I will say this on the show. All the years that LSU has had that boot trophy, Richard, it has literally been tucked behind like a plastic folder divider on the secretary's desk in the football office at LSU. I've seen it for years that way. They don't give a shit about that trophy.
But at Arkansas, it's going to be like in the rotunda when you walk in.
Oh, it's going to have lighting. It's going to have
Gotcha.
There'll be like fucking effects next to it. Kentucky 34, Vandy 17. Shout out to Mike Golick Jr. who was in town. I gave him a restaurant recommendation. The only thing I'm going to say about this was this thing basically entered junk time at the half because it was 31-3, and Golick apparently talked about Taylor Swift for like 5 to 10 minutes on a live broadcast. So that's just awesome. Richard, one more jab about Florida. Missouri 31, South Carolina 28. How the fuck did this team throttle your team?
Florida plays Missouri next week. And that's all I'll say about that. Ohio State 59, Purdue 31. It wasn't that close.
No spoiler maker this week. Shout out. I can't remember who gave me spoiler maker on social this weekend. Ohio State, this is real easy. This is as the non-math, non-stats guy, it's very easy to create context here. Ohio State scored in its first 7 possessions, and Stroud had 5 passing touchdowns. I remember you telling me, way back in August, don't short sell Ohio State because they're replacing skill position personnel. They are good enough to bring him along, and guess what? They have brought him along.
They sure should have.
And next week, Richard,
and they've brought on Travion Henderson as well. That young man can go. That run, one of the more impressive runs of the weekend, given how he absolutely exploded all of Purdue's ankle tackling attempts on that run. Next week, noon Eastern, Michigan State plays Ohio State. Michigan State beats Maryland 40-21. There were a couple times when Maryland tried to get to cover range. Maryland was a 13-point favorite. Michigan State did not let that happen. Impressive for Michigan State.
5 in a row for Maryland. Wisconsin 35, Northwestern 7. As a parent, this one weirds me out just because of the age. By the way, Scotty started the year 1-3. They've gone on a 6-0 run. This is the parent thing.
Enough. It's different than they started 1-3, like losing close games. They got fucking smoked in 2 of the 3.
That makes this 6-0 run even more impressive, right?
Erasure.
Shout out to 17-year-old freshman running back Braylon Allen. That's crazy to me. 173 yards and 3 touchdowns. They're Wisconsin again. I think it's amazing that they've done this down the stretch because they looked like ass to begin the season.
Speaking of ass, Rutgers 38, Indiana 3.
We got to have a talk, Richard.
Tough.
It's time to sit down with Tom. We gotta. This is mandate time now, where it's like, and we'll get to some other coaches like this. I'm a macro guy, but like, we got to talk about how much of your success is going to be isolated to what's already happened and the coordinators you no longer have.
Scarlet Knights 1 win away from bowl eligibility.
Richard, one of the terrible things I get to do when I'm co-hosting the show is I get to ask for EPA about games like Iowa 27, Minnesota 22. This is disgusting. I just want to go ahead and so Iowa's offense. This is directly from Parker.
Spencer Petras didn't play in this game, by the way.
Iowa only gained 37.1% of available yards, which is very just the most shit-ass Iowa game that they win. And I'm not saying this to knock them. This is just Iowa football. Tanner Morgan also had a negative 7.02 total EPA in a 5-point game. That's not good. They're just Iowa's offense. When you look at advanced stats, they're terrible. And they do exactly what they need to hit big plays and win games because their defense just absolutely terrorizes most of the conference teams. Let's go to the Pac-12, Richard.
Oregon 38, Washington State 24. I think like this may scare people about Oregon, sort of only winning this game by 14 points, but like Washington State has been weirdly game the entire year.
Dude, there's some people
despite
mad
everything
online.
That's happened.
Like as we record this on Sunday morning, the hashtag mad online is like people mad Oregon's in the top 4, Oregon fans furious that people are contextualizing this game the wrong way. Like So as far as the EPA stuff goes, the success rate was basically the difference for Oregon. They moved the ball better. Washington State had a couple big plays, so it made it look everything kind of closer than it seemed. Oregon was very balanced. They ran against a bad run defense 67.3% of the time. Washington State passed very well. I don't want to parse this much more than the fact that, look, this game was tied at half when most people went to bed. Oregon dominated the third quarter specifically. And if you take away junk time yardage, they allowed 62 yards in the second half that are in non-junk time scenario. Like, that's fine. I'm fine with this. I don't understand why everyone's mad.
Utah 38, Arizona 29. Utes get Ducks next Saturday.
Yeah. Are you still like buyer beware with Oregon? Because Utah looked like shit.
Ask me on the midweek because I think I'm writing about Utah this week.
Cool.
Because I got to figure it out.
Beautiful.
Because Arizona 29 points is not what we like to see.
No, dog.
Say. Oregon State 35, Stanford 14. Changes need to come. I'm not talking about the big man at Stanford, but in that building, something's gotta change.
If there is not a second chapter written, then this is the last chapter as far as the Shaw era goes. Arizona State
35, Washington 30. Cover of the week, by the way.
Explain this because I didn't see this.
Washington was driving initially to try to win the game. Washington throws a pick 6 to go down, I believe it was 10, and lose the cover. They were 5.5 or 5-point dogs, depending on where you get them and when you got them. Washington then comes back and in a 3-play, 60-something yard drive, gets the cover back with like a minute to go. And then had a legitimate opportunity to win this game, and they did not. So just funny, given what's happened with Washington. Mm-hmm. Another story came out that Jimmy Lake apparently shoved a player in 2019. That situation is not getting any better and rapidly devolving off of the field for Washington.
Let's go to the ACC. Florida State 31, Miami 28. I love the 90s. I said it on the midweek show. Is it crazy here, although I'm not as myopic as you are about Florida in general, the state of, that the Noles are 3-6. They have momentum going into the Florida game, and they are arguably in the best position of the big three, even though they're 3-6?
I don't really think you can say any one of these three teams is head and shoulders or even above water against the other two. I think they're crab in the bucket scenario right now. Now, if Florida State wins the game in a couple weeks, I think it's a different story.
Okay.
But for now, I think they're all sort of the same crabs in a bucket. Wake 45, NC State 42. Wake's going to the fucking conference championship game, man.
Yep. Pitt 30, UNC 23 in overtime. This was the Thursday night game that I watched. Very deceptive final score. North Carolina's offense, we played the Georgia-Vanderbilt game on Twitter through most of this where basically Pitt had more points than UNC had yards on offense. So they basically disappear for the entire first half. The offensive line is terrible. This was a failure of a season across the board for North Carolina. Phil Longo's offense cannot adjust to the situation that they're in. Congrats to Pitt, but like this North Carolina thing is bad. Speaking of, oh my God. Richard, do you know what it looks like to jump straight off of the hot seat? It's Louisville 41, Syracuse 3. Did you watch this?
Where did this come from?
What the fuck?
Where, Lamar was on the sideline and he treated it.
Did Lamar play?
Like the time. Yeah. That's what I was like. Did Lamar put on his retired jersey?
Friend of the show, Mark
come
Ennis,
game?
who does radio at Louisville, was like, he was kind of on the, I don't know if I'm blasting him here, but he was like, man, they're going to fucking eat it on Lamar Day, and it's going to be terrible. And like, oh, my God. Serious questions need to be asked, Richard. BC 41, Georgia Tech 30. It is really, really hard to talk about Georgia Tech in terms of like positive progress as a program. It's time
Has
to
he already made changes on the defense?
No, Thacker's still the defensive coordinator, but like we gotta
have to change.
Yeah, so just okay. Hey, guess what? Let's talk about something real fun. LOL. If you're familiar with the term speed running in the video game community, that's when people like try and break video games and do things super fast. Steve Sarkisian is speed running every shitty era of Texas football. Kansas 57, Texas 56. Take it away, Richard. I'll be back with some awesome stats in a second.
Kansas snaps the joint longest FBS losing streak overall. They snapped the longest losing streak to just FBS opponents. They snapped the joint longest conference losing streak. And they snapped the longest conference road losing streak. It had been since 2008, in the year of our Lord, since Kansas had won a conference road game. Apparently, Kansas fans tried to storm their own field in Lawrence. The game was played in Austin. Apparently, Kansas fans showed up, tried to tear down the goalposts in Lawrence, from what I saw on social media, and they were stopped.
Really hard to tear down goalposts. Don't do it.
Kansas fullback / tight end walk-on Jared Casey scores the game-winning 2-point conversion. He had never played a snap of offense for the Jayhawks until last night.
That is
incredible story.
Absolutely insane. Texas had better field position, 33-yard line to the 29-yard line, a better success rate, 56 to Kansas's 43, and a higher EPA per play. They still lost. Kansas rushed on 66% of their early downs. They had a methodical approach, Richard, to this game, and it won. They had a .66 EPA per rush. Like, this was, we're going to go in there and do the Lance Leipold Buffalo, like, we're going to get big and physical on Texas, and it worked.
Texas has been soft on defense all season. Whatever. Kansas State 34, West Virginia 17. I don't know how good Kansas State really is. I think they're probably the best of that, like, mushy middle Big 12,
sure.
Right?
You could tell me. You could tell me whatever. Yeah.
And also,
tied at 38, 3 seconds to go, 62-yard try. Garibay has his foot into it. It may be long enough. It is good. It is good. It is good. Jonathan Garibay has won the game with a 62-yard field goal.
Texas Tech 41, Iowa State 38. That is Brian Jensen of the Texas Tech Radio Network from Learfield. Shout out to our friends at Learfield and the Varsity Network. 62 yards for the win.
Man.
Wow, indeed. Also in wow, Oklahoma State 63, TCU 17.
How did TCU beat Baylor?
All right, Pokes. All right. Do not fucking blow this.
Are you going to say this out loud?
Do not fucking blow this Thanksgiving weekend.
No, say what's in the notes. Are you going to say it out loud?
I am starting to believe.
Oh, my gosh. In all seriousness, I said this last week. It is the thing I check on with Oklahoma State every week because I keep expecting it to fall apart. This defense is just so much better than what anything Mike Gundy has had. Wow, we're already past the time. This is going to be fantastic. Let's go to that group of five where we make our money. Hey, guess what? UNLV won again, Richard.
That's two.
Big game is a big game. We're going to get real excited about it. San Diego State 23, Nevada 21. It was a San Diego State type of big game. How's that?
Our boy hits the game winner.
Yeah.
Unironically, I don't think people everybody's like, oh, well, they kick, they should be able to punt, right? A lot of people say that in the NFL. Why do you roster both a kicker and a punter? Why don't you just have one guy do both jobs? It's hard. It's a different bodily movement. Mm-hmm. He's not a very good field goal kicker, by the way. He missed one in this game by like a full goalpost, like width of space, and a very bad miss, but he does hit the game winner. So that's our boy. He also increased, did Matareza, his average punt distance in this game.
Cincinnati 45, South Florida 28. I'm shutting up. They didn't cover 23.5. I know that they were fine in this game. I'm not blown away by that defense anymore, so I'm shutting up for a while.
Yeah, they were fine. They were fine. They took care of business. Well, I'm less underwhelmed with this one than I am the last two or three.
Just as a body
games
of work, though, ECU 30, Memphis 29. Wow,
Cincinnati.
You know Memphis is 5-5.
Cincinnati gets this ECU team in a couple weeks. By the way, tricky Pirates.
Explain to me SMU 55, UCF 28. Explain what this note to me.
Gus was like on a scissor lift on the sideline. I think he hurt his leg or something. So he was sitting on the sideline and stuff. Also, Deion Sanders as well at Jackson State.
Oh, I saw that.
Just got out of the hospital and was in like a motorized wheelchair.
My guy was
on the sideline.
Yeah, my guy was scooting around in the Professor X chair. Maybe Gus and Bo Nix have like a psychic bond and they suffer the same injuries at the same time. UAB 21, Marshall 14. Marshall was not quite ready. I got a little too hypey about them. Blazers look good, though.
Blazers 7-3. UTSA 27.
Yeah.
Southern Miss 17.
So UTSA has the same Louisiana habit of like playing with your worst opponent, the terrible food. Because
this is a bad one too because Southern Miss like doesn't have a quarterback.
No, they suck. So UTSA earlier in the season only beat UNLV by 7, and because there's no attention on them in terms of like anything to do with the playoff or any postseason, this stuff kind of goes under the radar. But next week, UAB, UTSA, that will be a good game. A fucking terrible game, Richard. I tried to get the audio from this, but everyone shot me down because apparently we do have a sickos limit here. Old Dominion 30, Florida Atlantic 16. This is why it was the sickos game of the week. It was 4-3 in the second quarter. Okay, that was after FAU was sacked for one safety and then had another called for intentional grounding in the end zone. Old Dominion, as Richard, I think this is the first time in history, had 4 2-point plays in one game. So the two safeties, right? A 2-point conversion that they converted, and then they returned a blocked point after for 2. This has happened.
If this has happened before, don't tell me. It is the editorial stance of Split Zone Duo that this is the first time this has happened in the history of the sport.
FAU, this is not good for Willie Taggart. This is ugly. Let's go to the Sun Belt. Big upset, Georgia State 42, Coastal Carolina 40. Just real fast, Darren Granger's the Georgia State quarterback. He's a Conway, South Carolina native. 3 for 198 and 2 touchdowns. This is Georgia State's hey, you want some Tennessee shade? Of course you do. This is Georgia State's first win over a ranked team in program history, Richard. Not Tennessee.
Louisiana 35, Troy 21. Louisiana will host the Sun Belt title game. Played with their food. I don't think Troy's especially good.
Yeah.
You say it was a 7-point game in the fourth quarter. I will take your word for it.
Yep.
I'm sure it was a busy week for the Louisiana coaching staff, so could understand why.
Wonder what we're
some
talking
things may have
about.
slipped through the cracks.
All right, here's the MAC recap because I don't want to get yelled at. Okay, these games were on Wednesday, so I'm not going to go box score by box score. Toledo, Northern Illinois, Central Michigan were winners. If you're not paying attention to MAC, here's how I table set you to go through the rest of the season. Kent and Miami are tied in the East. They have 2 weeks left to play. They play each other the final week of the season. So that's pretty much going to decide the East. Meanwhile, Richard, Northern fucking Illinois, is in control of the West.
How about it?
Now,
you want to talk about close game math.
Dude.
Nebraska's on one end. Northern Illinois is completely on the other. And we love it.
They lost a shootout to Kent 2 weeks ago. They haven't played Miami. If it is Kent, Northern Illinois, that Friday night MAC championship is going to be really, really fun to watch.
Speaking of fun, for some of us, UConn covers. After 2 weeks off, the Fighting UConn Huskies return the opening kickoff for a touchdown and then do nothing more against Clemson. UConn loses 44-7. They high-fived on the kickoff, did the return man and one of his personal protectors, his escorts, into the end zone. They almost actually returned the last kickoff of the game, too. But were unable to. Dabo's son scored on one of the good fake field goals in this game. He's a holder. Clemson does take care of business. DJ Uiagalelei replaced, then the replacement gets hurt again, which is, I think, the second time he's gotten hurt after he's replaced DJ, if I remember correctly. Anyway, UConn covers 41. We'd love to see it.
What did we forget this week?
I don't fucking know. Somebody's going to tweet at us.
See you Wednesday.